Dwarfs have always been one of the toughest matchups for the Empire for a few reasons, primarily because the Dwarfs can outshoot the Empire and out-infantry the Empire, and you don't have any effective chariots as the Empire. No, war wagons do not count as chariots. But today, Wei is going to be taking on Tank. This is from the Salad Cup Finals. I unfortunately didn't get the opportunity to cast any of the Salad Cup yesterday. Was cast by Aerocrastics. He was the one hosting it as well, so I'll be sure to link down in the description below to his channel. You guys be sure to go check out the full live stream if you want to see. This is one of the battles. I apologize for the flickering lake. Not a lot I can do about that. Anyway. But yeah, Dwarfs and Empire. So taking a look at Wei's build here, he's gone with Gaston, the Huntsman General, with no abilities, which is a pretty interesting choice. We'll talk about that more in a minute. 5 Flagellants and 5 Greatswords. Obviously, Greatsword's going to be decent against Dwarfs, armor-piercing anti-infantry, but their stats are not amazing for the cost. Generally, they tend to get outperformed by Dwarf infantry. A single handgun as well, and we've also got the Amber Wizard and a unit of Empire Knights over on the far side. The rockets you saw there at the beginning, Hellstorm rocket batteries, currently taking volleys from cannons, but Wei actually drops the artillery themselves, moves the crews back in the woods to hide and shield them from the cannon fire. Speaking of which, there's 2 cannons, plus the Goblobber, a regiment-renowned Grudge Thrower, Master Engineer, and Ungrim Iron Fist. We've also got Dwarf Warriors and Thunderers, Slayers, and Longbeards with great weapons. So, given that a lot of Empire's power has traditionally come from its cavalry, and especially now in the cavalry beta, which this was played on, a lot more of their strength now will come from that again. Dwarfs have always had really good counter-cavalry tools, and Slayers, guns, all this anti-armor also means that your one sort of armored, armor-piercing anti-infantry unit in Greatswords is vulnerable to all of these guns, and it historically has been very tough for Empire as a result. But right now, making this approach here, the Huntsman General is an interesting choice because he's so cheap and he has a ranged attack. He doesn't need to fight in melee at all to gain value, and with no spells or abilities or anything special going on at all, just basically base cost, he is super cheap, and potentially against a large target like Ungrim or Thoric Ironbrow, you would be getting that benefit of the bonus versus large on his bows, even though it's not on his bow, even though it's not armor piercing necessarily like Marcus Wolfheart. But Flagellants getting in here, mixing that up with some Dwarf Warriors. It'll be an interesting trade just because the Dwarf Warriors don't have much damage output, but a nice Fire Ring of Thori from Tank here, just going to shred that unit of Flagellants. So far, this is sort of what we would come to expect. Attacking uphill for the Empire also is a little bit tough here. This unit of Greatswords, basically 0 value, completely routed before they've got into combat at all. But here, this is potentially a great engagement if the Flagellants can get on the Slayers. A few Greatswords also utilizing the terrain. This is one of the steps of Isha maps, trying to get into combat without having taken much damage. Likewise, the Hellstorms, safe from the cannons, given that they're now firing at more eminent, threats close up. The Hellstorms are going to go remount their artillery pieces and begin to fire in. Flagellants also just bypassing Ungrim there and going directly after the cannons, trying to shut down this artillery because the Empire has so many more melee infantry units that can do this to a degree, even with some of them having been routed off. Nice flank fire from the handgunners as well. They're mostly going ignored for the time being by Tank here as he focuses on the melee threats. But Amber Wizard also maneuvering up and around the lines here. If we take a look, the Engineers targeting looks like it's just going after the Flagellants here that are on the cannon, which makes sense to a degree. But the Empire Knights get through. They manage to bypass the Slayers here. Oh, brutal side-shotting Amber Spear from the Amber Wizard, going to take down another unit of Thunderers as the Empire Knights now sweep through and get on the last cannon. So artillery's been shut down, but damage has already been done in many ways. You can see the Empire infantry suffering pretty badly here, as there is basically only this one unit of Greatswords that's above half HP, and even then they're rapidly approaching 50%, so a little bit rough on that end. But the Hellstorms now being back online is nice, especially given that the Empire infantry is tattered. But it's a lot of tattered Flagellants, not necessarily tattered souls, but you get it. And the fact that they're, sort of spread thinly, forcing the Dwarfs into blobby engagements means that Flagellants might take a few hits from the Hellstorms, but most of the hits are going to be landing on Dwarf Warriors and other high-value targets. This Slayer also overextending a little bit, trying to go after these handgunners here. They're going to get collapsed on by 2 tattered Greatswords. Great little move here. Great swords will trade fantastically here. So great. Many greats. All the greats, in fact. That anti-infantry plus the armor means they can hit Slayers pretty hard without getting hit too hard in return. And a nice kind of envelopment here by those two. Meanwhile, the rockets definitely making their presence felt. They haven't generated a ton of value yet, but they have so much ammunition left that, you know, as long as Way still has the tools to deal with single entities in the late game, the rockets should be able to basically thin out everything that's left from an infantry standpoint for the Dwarfs. But let's take a look here. Gaston not too badly hurt. He did take a little bit of damage there, but starting to run low on ammunition. Ember Wizard definitely taking some more damage, as you can see the Master Engineer picking away. I think he's actually shooting Gaston. Let's go in here and check. Yep, looks like he is taking pot shots at the old Huntsman there. He's standing in the non-flickering water now. Maybe. Deciding who he wants to shoot. It's a little bit hard to decide, you know. But Ungrim just cleaning up the last few flagellants there. He's starting to take damage from Gaston here. And again, 120 armor is pretty good, but Gaston should be able to still do some damage to him. Let's get in and take a look here. Mind ourselves. Yeah, 160 AP is pretty decent. Just the high missile damage overall and decent fire rate. Oop, little return fire there from the Engineer. The Empire Knights sort of weirdly non-charge path in and then run away. Nice Amber Spear shot as well on Ungrim, so just pouring in everything. Gaston, though, 36 speed. Only 32 speed on Ungrim, but you can see with his charge animation active that he is significantly faster than Gaston, which is obviously going to be a problem for him. Gaston can shoot 360 and fire while moving, so you can see he kind of turns around and side shots Ungrim right there. But it's not going to last too long for Gaston. That's fine. He is mostly done what he needed to. Anyway, Dwarf army is more or less in shambles. Got a handful of tattered units over here. Goblopper crew might try and come back, mostly just down to the Dwarf heroes, as is often the case. And there are still a number of great swords left here. Ones that cleaned up those Slayers. There's a handful left right here. Whoops. Along with the Empire Knights. Should be some resources. A handful more great swords left over here. Not to mention the handgunners still with a decent amount of ammunition left. And the rockets continuing to fire at any non-single entity units. Even just one rocket landing in the near vicinity will do quite a bit of damage. So, yeah, it doesn't take too much. The attacked by artillery leadership debuff also super important to take down these dwarf troops in the late game. Handful more flagellants. And the Empire Knights trying to get a rear charge. They just kind of bypass those Slayers, even though one of them does die there. But, yeah, the Engineer doesn't have a lot of defensive stats. I mean, he has good armor, but his melee defense is relatively poor at only 30. He should take plenty of damage for the great swords. One more fiery ring of Thori, though, just to tear apart those remaining handgunners. Does some pretty good damage. Doesn't quite finish them off, but Gaston's still alive. Does come back from rout with about 5 shots left. But he can use those to good effect here. Last flagellant goes down there. And just Ungrim and the Engineer deciding what to do next. Taking pot shots at whatever. I mean, the Engineer still has a decent amount of ammunition left as well. 29 ammunition left. I think, can he actually refill ammo on himself? Yeah, doesn't look like he... Yes, he does have more powder. So, anyway. Ungrim going to get in. Fighting these great swords. Amber Wizard going to go for a little bit of a cycle charge here. Since Ungrim's on the move, he won't get the benefit of his charge defense, so Amber Wizard can come for a quick swipe at the Mohawk and then immediately run away, which is definitely the right call. Empire Knights Flash Bomb on them, takes down their melee defense and speed. They do not rout, though. There's, what, 2 Longbeards here? 6 Longbeards here? Wow, that's pretty impressive. They're still fighting. Finally, the great swords get their chance to shine. Their awesome wavy blades and floppy hats. Oh, there's the Amber Wizard again. Hello and goodbye. You can see Ungrim's not super happy about that cycle charge, so he's going to try and chase slightly, but then gets back into the great swords. The Hellstorm rocket crews, actually, there's no real point in using them to try and shoot these single entities. Makes sense, so they're just going to come in and provide a little bit of extra leadership support and possibly some extra bodies. But the Engineer somehow still landing shots on Gaston, even though he's surrounded by great swords getting chopped. Gaston does survive so far. He's got 24 HP. Let's see if the Engineer can get one more cheeky shot off. Oh no, he's turning. He's turning. Yeah, looks like the artillery crew. Nope! Oh! Take both his arms off with one shot. I don't even know how that's physically possible. And I don't even know how he got the shot through those artillery crewmen either, but, you know, that's such is the life of Gaston. Ungrim goes down as well to the great swords. You know, just feet stuck in the ground, jutting out at a very awkward angle, forming a ledge here on this hill. Ooh, nice rear charge on the little engineer there. Wei's cycle charge with this Amber Wizard is really good. And the Amber Wizard, keep in mind, as far as Battle Wizards go, actually does have a slightly different stat line with much higher melee attack and much lower melee defense than your typical Battle Wizard, Empire Battle Wizard. I have to check the weapon strength. I think it's the same, but we can look at that after the fact. But the Engineer's not going to stick around, so it looks like Wei will take home that game. Awesome game, super well played. Both, honestly. It's a tough matchup for the Empire, but you can sometimes get away with, especially on maps where you can utilize some interrupted lines of sight, not have all of your stuff get absolutely blasted on the approach. Also, very good play with the Hellstorms there, even though they didn't end up accruing that much value at the end of the day. Still just, you know, having that value left on the field, helping clean up in the late game from a tactical perspective, leadership debuffs, and just general damage on various tattered units. You know, the Empire Knights did pretty well also, basically turning it a Reichsguard in terms of damage value, which is really nice to see. I do think the cavalry beta is going to help Empire significantly. You still probably shouldn't bring a ton of cavalry in this matchup, but especially, like I said, on an interrupted line of sight like this, the Empire Knights could get in without taking much damage. Really nice. Most of the great swords didn't pay for themselves. One of them did. Flagellant's basically the same story. Two of them paid for themselves. One of them actually doubled their damage value. Just fantastic. Decent damage value on the Amber Wizard as well. And we'll check the cost, what it is to take Gaston without anything. But I'd imagine it's pretty cheap. The Engineer actually ends up getting really good value here. And I almost wonder, you know, double Engineer is a lot of hero spend, but I don't know, you know, the artillery, hindsight's 2020 obviously, but the artillery on this particular map, I might have cut one of the cannons. I actually do like the pick of the catapult because it can kind of fire in an arc, but I honestly might even cut both of the cannons and then take like another engineer and maybe another slayer or something. Hard to say. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, but it's interesting the pick of Gaston here as the Lord, you know, given that like most of your lords are just going to lose in melee or get shot down, one of the two. And as a result, you know, you can kind of look here at Gaston and the fact that he's not at all threatening, right? Only 750 points, which is, I mean, he absolutely paid for himself in that case. Has good damage output potential for that super cheap price, and you don't have to put him in melee risk. His combat stats are not amazing, but if in a late game you have to like cycle charge with him into a dwarf character who's blobbed up, say, in some infantry or whatever, you can. Also has Vanguard deployments. You can maybe get a sneaky little early volley or two or something. I don't know. You do have to be a little bit careful of that, but mostly just for the cheapness and the fact that you don't have to use him at all in melee to get value from him. Because, like, yes, you could take a General of the Empire for cheaper, technically, but you have to get this guy fighting in melee to get value from him, and somebody like Ungrim is going to beat the crap out of him, so not a great trade there, but I actually really do like that pick from Wei. Might have to try that myself in that matchup. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, though. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.